Well, I tried hard not to get reflected light in my glasses, but it's not working. But let's look at this nice report. It's a World Bank group that gave countries mandate on producing country climate and development report, CCDR. So that's what we will discuss. It's all about actions, people in a changing climate, how to go from vulnerability to action. So it's got some few good points. I'm going to be very brief. Basically, they have global challenges programs, and they identify the top few global challenges programs that we will look at. Let's just jump to the main points. The role of CCDRs, country climate and development reports, in forming the World Bank's new global change programs. The World GCPs are a series of country-level operations that aim to help countries address global challenges more quickly and effectively, which is needed, of course. The GCPs combine public and private sector solutions and financing to achieve results that are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and implemented with greater scale, speed and impact. The first 6 GCPs outlined here are consistent with the priorities identified in CCDRs, which will inform delivery at a country level. Okay, GCP 1, fast track water security and climate adaptation to strengthen water security. And of course, it will also help with sustainable water management and disaster risk reduction. GCP 2, energy access and transition to increase access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy by scaling up clean energy and phasing down fossil fuel use. GCP 3 is on enhanced health emergency prevention, preparedness and response to enhanced capacity to prevent and prepare for health emergencies by strengthening health systems at country, regional and global levels. GCP 4, accelerating digitalization at scale to enable innovation and adoption of technology. Food and nutrition security to help break down cycle of food and nutrition insecurity by 2030 is GCP 5. GCP 6 is forests for development, climate and biodiversity to build a sustainable forest economy in critical forest biomes. Okay, so there is many ways in which they arrive at these, but we will not go into all the details. It's a nice report. It's available online. You would definitely want to follow up if you want more details. So which are the countries that developed the CCDRs by November 2024 when the report was finalized? Published by COP28 and published since COP28. You can follow up on the dates. The COPs, of course, are the Conference of Parties which happen every year, so this must have happened just before the 29. So 23rd COP28 must have been, anyway, you follow it up. So published by COP28, all the blue things and then yellow things, and you can see that China has published one, but India and Southeast Asia, many countries haven't published. Pakistan has published a CCDR. I don't know what the politics involved in those are, but the share of low-income and middle-income countries covered by country climate and development reports by various metrics. Population in billions, 60% are covered here and 40% are not covered. So, 60% of the countries, so that accounts for 4 billion people and 2.7 not they are published reports, so you take the blue ones and the orange ones, and other low and middle income countries are in the gray. So that's 2.7 billion in LIC and MIC remain to be covered. GDP covered, $29.1 trillion of 2022 level, and 11 remain. 11 billion of the LICs and MICs in terms of GDPs haven't submitted CCDRs. GHG emissions in million tons of CO2 equivalent, so including non-CO2 greenhouse gases. 25,311 million tons of CO2 equivalent are covered, but 10,812 are haven't published yet. Disaster losses, 899 billions over 2000 to 2003. 450 billion are other low and middle income countries that haven't published the CCDR. It gives you a sense that fair numbers have done their due diligence in meeting World Bank suggestions on CCDRs and then GCPs, and that goes with setting up projects, finance, public-private partnerships, governance, etc. So why countries don't do it, there's always some issues or calculations involved, but I'm not going into those. Policy recommendations by sector across CCDRs, low emission development, so you have energy that covers majority of it, transport, and then you have agriculture, forestry, and other land uses, buildings, and several other items. The sectors here: energy, transport, AFOLU, buildings, industry, environment, waste, finance, education, water, health, digital, and government. Okay, so you have A&R, both. Oops, I again forgot what A&R. Why do I do this? I always read the report and then it takes me a while to record it, and then I actually they have a list of yeah. A&R is adaptation and resilience. Oh, how can I forget that? See how stupid I'm getting now with age. So adaptation and resilience and both. So low emission development, adaptation and resilience and both. So here adaptation and resilience, you have water, AFOLU, environment, health, education, transport, and finance, and then both you have finance, AFOLU, environment. So various percentages of the pie chart, but basically it covers everything. We do need adaptation and resilience, and low emission development of course is part of the mitigation and adaptation, and water security, energy security, sustainable development, and so on. So it seems all like synergistic activities that everybody should participate, and of course low income, middle income countries need help. Climate finance, loss and damage, various other discussions keep going on, but you have to also have parallel efforts funded by development banks and other public-private partnerships and finances. Second section, people are at the center of climate change risks, but also at the core of adaptation and mitigation solutions. The key messages of Section 2: climate change poses significant risks to people, causing long-term, irreversible, and intergenerational harm. The most vulnerable populations are often disproportionately affected, as vulnerability factors such as economic exclusion, food insecurity frequently intersect with climate exposure. So they are all interdependent. People are at the core of climate solutions as well. Investing in people through education, reskilling, health, functioning labor markets, social protection, and so on is crucial for building people's ability to adapt to climate change and contribute to and benefit from low emission development. Placing people at the core of climate development policies, as opposed to addressing their challenges through complementary policies, enhances policy effectiveness and can foster more inclusive growth. So you want to somehow track adaptation, mitigation, resilience, as well as inclusiveness in everything you do, and there has to be consistency between sustainable development goals, NDCs, mitigation, adaptation, and some are international commitments, some are very internal, and so on. But countries that need help have to get all that capacity development. The figure here shows just an example of how Cameroon's social exclusion and climate risk combined by region. So if you have if you look at the social exclusion and climate risk, low multidimensional exclusions and climate risks, so everything becomes low. If you have good multidimensional exclusion, low exclusion, and climate risk also goes down for everybody. It's like saying resilience is only as strong as the weakest component in the society, right? So exclusion is part of leaving out people. High multidimensional exclusion and climate risks go into stronger colors, so you end up jeopardizing the entire system. So people in power with information, knowledge, skill, political power, and so on, can try to exclude certain groups, ethnicities, languages, various things play out, but that basically makes everybody be vulnerable. Box 2 here, climate policies seen from a child's perspective. Children are particularly vulnerable to climate change impacts. CCDRs report severe impacts, particularly for girls, that threaten their health and access to essential services such as education, sanitation, and clean and reliable drinking water. As a result of drought, girls in Ethiopia have to drop out of school to collect water, and children and youth in Côte d'Ivoire have to spend more time more time tending their family farms and less time in school. CCDRs also flag evidence that climate change induced crop losses that lead to food insecurity can undermine children's cognitive development, impacting learning and future productivity and income, so you can get trapped into this vicious circle. Of course, there are opportunities to incorporate children into climate response measures, and include maternal health care, nutritional support, shock responsive education, so you protect schools and school days and kids during shocks, and social protection programs for families with children. And there are some examples that are success stories. Labor productivity impact from heat stress by 2050, hot and dry climate scenario. There are ways in which these are done, the projections, but nonetheless you should be aware of potential risks. These are percentage changes in labor productivity compared to 2050 baseline. So if you go here in terms of GDP per capita in US dollars back to 2023, and you have low GDP means labor productivity loss can be high. So you can see the range here, and Poland, Armenia, Moldova, Tajikistan, Ethiopia, and so on. And there must be a color coding for, I skipped it, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. You know that low per capita income comes with high vulnerability, which means labor productivity losses will be high for countries which have low per capita income. Okay, so Poland is up here, high per capita GDP, and it has basically no loss of productivity, but somehow some countries which have low GDP still have low loss of labor productivity. So you can go figure out what that means. Social protection system readiness results for selected CCDR countries. Upper middle income, so you have countries like Argentina, Montenegro, Albania, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, Kosovo, and Indonesia, etc. Programs and delivery systems, many are emerging or established, some are nascent, like Maldives. Data and information, financing, institutional arrangement, etc. So you have to know where they are as of today, let's say when the report was published in 2024. Lower middle income countries like Honduras, Bangladesh, Pakistan, etc. Some are emerging and some are nascent, but none of them is established yet. Low income, again, all nascent or latent, not even emerging. So obviously long way to go for poorer countries. Climate change and people affected by fragility, conflict, and violence. Then among the 72 countries and economies with CCDRs published to date, 18 are classified as fragile and conflict states, and their CCDRs reference the potential for climate change to act as threat multiplier for conflict, which can reduce resilience and increase environmental degradation. So it's a very complicated and complex problem, because heat can increase violence already, but you have crop losses, water problems, and you have forest degradation, livelihood degradation, vulnerability to heat stress and livelihood losses, especially for women, and school education losses for children, etc. So that's a big thing to worry about. People-centered climate solutions can address some of the immediate impacts of climate change while also tackling key drivers of conflict, such as resource scarcity and inequities. So there are some showpieces. I used to say poster child, but somebody else started using it a little too much, and I switched to showpiece. So Yemen is one of those countries which has got this problem. US is bombing them now because they have some engagement of attacking ships in the Persian Gulf and so on. People's resilience and low emission development require urgent action in key sectors. That's the third section. Key messages here: people are also affected by climate change and policies through key infrastructure systems, including power, water, transport, and digital. Ensuring these are reliable, affordable, sustainable, and resilient are essential for people's resilience and well-being, but also for productivity and job creation. The CCDRs highlight the potential resilience benefits of enhanced access to electricity, the insufficient investments in water infrastructure despite large benefits, and the potential gains from improved maintenance and construction standards in transport and other infrastructure. So a lot of good things are identified. It's then a matter of setting up projects, capacity building, and finance, etc. Low emission technologies and practices also offer important opportunities, including by expanding renewable energy, investing in public transit, and supporting the electrification of all transportation modes, and the growth of green value chains and the diffusion of digital technologies. Rapid urbanization provides a unique opportunity to develop resilient low-emission cities that can drive growth, typically innovation centers, and the irreversibility of urban development makes actions in this sector very urgent as well. Okay, how are CCDRs doing? Capacity in 34 CCDRs going from 2020 out to 2040, projected installed capacity in terawatts. So renewables in green, nice healthy growth expected. Nuclear will be part of the solution. Gas remains, should go down. Coal remains, but in the reference scenario, you are using pathways that are still very heavily dependent on fossil fuels. But if you look at low emission development scenarios, then renewables have to grow much more in terms of terawatts, and nuclear grows just a tad bit more than that. But gas grows, but at the expense of coal coming down. So there are always assumptions involved in making these projections in terms of the choices, so you can go and see what choices were made. The power system decarbonization pathways dashboard. So a new dashboard consolidates the results of power system analysis led by the World Bank in collaboration with country energy teams and government counterparts. Basically, you can see the example of Ghana here. Countries are also under pressure to decarbonize their entire system, in addition to growing renewables, also transportation, buildings, agriculture, enhance sinks of carbon and lower the sources and so on and so forth. So net zero and decarbonization help is provided through various input-output kind of options that they can play with. The most common water-related recommendations in CCDRs then: increase storage. So these are the numbers. Increase storage capacity for hydropower, irrigation, and drinking water. Adopt an integrated approach across water, agriculture, and forests. Reuse water and reuse wastewater and improve solid waste management. Rehabilitate and invest in infrastructure. Improve water use efficiency. Implement nature-based solutions and reform water tariffs. Okay, so you can look at details in the report. There are lots of deeper details. By the way, I'm just skipping and just sticking to some salient points. Economic and health benefits from transport policies. Of course, there are co-benefits. Increasing the rate of motorization comes at a substantial human cost, including air pollution, congestion, and fatalities. And then there are some examples from countries like Tunisia, Angola, Egypt, and so on. So there are lessons to be learned, but with too many motorized vehicles competing for too little road space, the increasingly intolerable congestion along with traffic accidents and air pollution that come with it has a high health cost burden. So obviously you want to think about investment with all the other co-benefits as well. Transportation is not just transportation, it's about reducing emissions and improving health conditions, air pollution reduction, etc. And of course weaning out of fossil fuels as well. So transport sector recommendations in CCDRs then about resilience, avoid, shift and improve. That's kind of the mantra. Resilient transport assets, resilient maintenance, rural connectivity, urban planning and mobility, etc. And you have here reform fossil fuel subsidies. You want to shift to public transportation, promote railways and waterways and so on, and support toward private electric vehicles has to improve, electric 2 and 3 wheelers, hydrogen based vehicles and biofuels. Biofuels has some issues in terms of competing for land and water and food security and so on and so forth. Fourth section, outcomes for people will depend on macroeconomic effects and aggregate risks and opportunities. Key messages then, poorer countries are more vulnerable to climate change impacts than richer ones. Are exposed to different threats and have lower adaptation potential. Some countries, especially since small island and developing states, have distinct geographical and socioeconomic characteristics that render them particularly vulnerable. In spite of the large potential of adaptation action, unavoidable residual risks make GHG emissions reductions a priority in all countries, especially in higher income countries and other large emitters. With well-designed policies, synergies across structural reforms and enhanced support from high-income countries, resilient and low-emission development pathways can achieve similar rates of economic growth than current trends. Larger investments are required for resilient and low-emission development, especially in lower-income countries. Private investments can contribute more to these needs, but public finance will continue to play a crucial role, and more concessional resources will be required, especially in low-income countries. So these are the benefits from adaptation interventions recommended in CCDRs. Low-income countries, here you are looking at percentage change in real GDP compared to 2050 baseline. So current policies where they are, and with adaptation where you will head. So you are going from where you are towards green, which means you are reducing losses and moving towards increases compared to the 2050 baseline. So low income, lower income, upper middle income. So it's easy enough to argue that adaptations will not only save lives and livelihoods but also increase overall productivity, GDP, etc., or at least have positive impacts on GDP growths, right? Conclusion and next steps then. This review of 3 years of CCDRs demonstrates the benefits of applying a people-focused lens to climate policy design. By prioritizing the product protection of and investing in people, countries can counteract potentially long-lasting climate change impacts on individuals and communities, lay the groundwork to foster innovative local climate solutions, accelerate climate action, and demonstrate the potential for achieving mutually reinforcing climate and development objectives. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive or contradicting each other. Protecting, building, and using human capital through education, healthcare, and social protection systems will not only shield the most vulnerable populations from climate impacts, but also empower them to drive innovative climate solutions. And by placing people at the core of climate policy design from day one and increasing engagement with communities and stakeholders, countries can navigate a green transition that improves people's lives and makes policies and economic growth more inclusive. Okay, so here are the 5 modalities of CCDR operationalization. How do you actually implement it? Country climate and development report, CCDRs, post-publication engagement, support through advisory services, analytics, and technical assistance. So you have government's own plans, nationally determined contributions, long-term strategies, national development plans, national adaptation plans, etc., global knowledge, data, tools, and models, and platforms and development partners, coordination mechanisms, various International Monetary Fund and so on, World Bank Group portfolio, And here, government actions that drive transformations and international and private financing. Altogether, you should end up with resilient and low emission pathways. Okay, that's the goal. Okay, so you have World Bank Group, International Monetary Fund, multilateral development banks, international financial institutions, International Finance Corporation, and multilateral investment guarantee agency. So potentially there are lots of sources for getting this done. With the guidance from these resources, things should be possible. So hopefully they will all move, because nobody is going to care about their vulnerability. If rich countries continue to rely on fossil fuels and do not move as fast on decarbonizing, then the low income and middle income countries will continue to pay a price. So they have to do a lot of things on their own. So that's the main message here in terms of resiliency and development with low emissions. Okay, let's leave it here.